This is a video on where to find aspects and upcoming transits, upcoming ingresses and retrogrades and moon cycles and all of that information that you may find, say, in a planner, like maybe a Magic of Eye digital calendar, maybe you've got some kind of subscription or app. Um, or maybe a honeycomb collective planner, that kind of thing, but all of those things. So when is a planet changing signs? When is it going retrograde? All of that. So I'm going to be using AstroSeek. So AstroSeek is a free resource. I use it for everything. I highly recommend kind of playing with all the drop-down options, clicking through, seeing what's there. But I'm going to show you all of the main things that I use. And so again, even though you can get some of this information in some of those places that I've mentioned, what I personally like to do, because I don't like to be online with everything, and I also think writing things really helps me remember stuff. And so I just get like an old school paper calendar, like an inexpensive, small wall calendar type thing, but a small version. And I write down some key things. And so the things that I write down and what I want to show you how to find is I write down ingresses. And ingresses, again, that's just when a planet changes signs. So say when the sun moves into Aries, for example, when it changes signs. So I write down every time one of the 7 planets change signs. I also write down, and you can certainly do all 10 when I show you all the planets. I'll show you where to find everything. I also write down all of the retrogrades for the year. Another thing that I do that I write down on the calendar is I write down when there's full moons, when there's new moons. I write down the eclipses. And then I also will make kind of like a little wavy line thing for whenever there's the moon is waning. And I also note when it's in Capricorn and when it's in Scorpio. And the reasons why I do some of those things is because sometimes I might have somebody call me up, like a client call up or ask a question about when is a good date to do something. And I do want to be aware of the different moon phases. So it might not be a great time to do a big launch during a waning moon. And then I don't have to go online or pull up a phone or do something to figure it out. I have it there on my calendar. And again, as far as the 2 moons, the Scorpio and the Capricorn, when the moon is in detriment or fall, that's not necessarily the best time to do things either. So those are the 2 ones that I also note on my calendar. I also note void, of course, moons. Not every one, because it happens all the time, but really just the Hellenistic ones. And that's when it goes, the moon is 30 degrees of not making an aspect of another planet. And that can still be a really useful time for something, but I do want to note that on my calendar. And there's an old school part of me. I used to be an adjunct writing professor, and I know when you do like pen to paper and you write stuff down, you remember it better. And so a lot of times I can just remember the dates of what's happening because I did take the time to look them up and then write them down on my paper calendar. So I'm going to walk you through how to find each of these things yourself using AstroSeek. So right now, I've got the screen up here for AstroSeek. And the very first thing that we're going to look to is where to find ingresses. So when a planet enters a sign. So on the screen here, so I'm using, this is just from my laptop. I've got an attached monitor. This is what I'm seeing. You can see it on your phone as well. It'll just appear a little bit differently. And just remember too, like on AstroSeek, you can always see, if you just pull up the page, the current planets do show up here on a sidebar. So you can always kind of have a check-in of where they're at. And if you want to see it visually, you can just click on up top. It says current planets, or over here it says current planets. So you can get a sense of what's happening. So first, to go and take a look and see when is a planet shifting signs. So up here on this toolbar, I'm going to Astro Tools, and then I'm going down here to the Astro Calendar Annual. I might change it. It might need to be monthly. Nope, it's here. We're good. All right, so we've done Astro Calendar Annual. And one of the things I recommend doing pretty quickly, if you want to note the times, and I do that. So I do want to know what time something is happening. You do want to change it to your time zone. So it's not really bright. It doesn't like jump out really big, but just, underneath this, way at the top, it says change to your local time zone. And you can just type in your city. and almost everything comes up, which is pretty cool. But now I've got all of the time connected to, for me locally, not just, Eastern or GMT, that kind of thing. So here we've got just in general, like the very beginning is just when is the sun changing signs. And so that's that whole, people when they say their sun signs, I'm this, I'm that, they do change a little bit, different times. Sometimes, like you'll run into a client that might be born, they might have thought like that day is what the next sign is, but they're like within an hour of it and they're not. So time matters. So this is just the sun. But the next one over, two over here are ingresses. And so again, this is something I mentioned that I do write down on my calendar. And reminder, an ingress is just simply when a planet enters a new zodiac sign. So this is a list of all the ingresses, and I do write this down on my paper calendar. So you've got all the ingresses, and if you want to look at it as a chart, you can click on it and it'll show you what the sky looks like. It'll pull up the wheel here. So you've got all the ingresses here. That's where you can find it. And if you're particular and you don't want to see the outer planets, you can certainly change it to traditional planets only, so Sun to Saturn. So we've got that. We've got the ingresses here. There's two different places to look at retrogrades, and there's another place to look at moons. And so I want to show you both of them because I do think our brains work different as well. And one of the reasons I write stuff on paper, even though I have, for example, like the digital magic of iCalendar, is sometimes I don't want to see just the little glyphs. Sometimes, when on my paper calendar, I actually write out the word Venus. I write out, Aries. I like to write out the words, and that's for me. So I don't want to use glyphs for everything sometimes. So on my paper calendar, I actually write out the words. And then sometimes I don't want all that information. So in those charts, you often see all of the aspects and different things that are happening. And I don't really need to know every time a planet makes a sextile to something else. So, that's just really not relevant to me. I'm not interested in that. I just want to know some of these major things. Those other things might be relevant if I want to drill down and work deeper on, again, either a client chart, for a certain or else a certain event. But, just on the daily, there's so much stuff happening into the sky. For me, it's too much. So that's why I want just some of the basics. But if you are somebody who really wants all those details, you can go back here. It says transits and aspects, and it will go through and it'll tell you every aspect for every planet if you want. So this is just the sun for conjunctions. But if you don't want just conjunctions, you can get sextiles, squares, trines, oppositions. And then if you want to go to those other ones beyond that, you can do that too. And you can do that for each of the planets. But there's other ways to do that, and that just doesn't feel like something that I want every day, all the time. That's just my personal preference. Um, the next thing here that you can see is full moons. There's another place that I'm going to show you in a minute that has a lot of detail on the moon, so I do want to go back to that. But this is really nice and easy. So what we did so far, again, we just went to Astro Tools, we went to the calendar for annual, and now we're seeing all of the major things. We got to see when the sun is changing signs. We got to see the ingresses. So every time a planet changes, we reset to our time zone. And these are the full moons. And again, I do full and new moons. I do include this on my paper calendar as well. I usually write down the degree where it happens because to me, again, that can be pertinent. So if something is happening really close to one of your personal planets, to me, that feels more relevant than if like, there's a moon happening at like 2 degrees and your planet's at 28. It's not that you're not going to feel it, but when it's closer, I like that information. And then the final thing that you can see on here are retrogrades. And I want to show you another way to see retrogrades that works for my brain a little bit better. But I just wanted to give you some options. So this is what the retrogrades look like throughout the year. And if you scroll down, it breaks it down by planet. And I do think it's really useful because it has direct, retrograde, and direct. So when it stations retrograde, the retrograde period, and then when it stations direct. So you do have all of those dates, all of that information. So this in and of itself is really nice. There's one other place that you can look at it. And there's also one other place, and I'm going to show you where to see Mercury's pre and post shadow for people that follow that. So we've done all of this under the Astro calendar. So now we're going to let's go back to the main page. If we go to the main page and scroll down and look at these boxes down here below, there's this retrograde tables. We click on that. And that's another place where you can see retrogrades. So if you want to just pull up retrogrades, it breaks it down by planet, but it's just in a different visual way. And again, we all receive information differently. So I just wanted you to have another option of this is what it can look like. So this is another one. And if you scroll down further, if this works for your brain, great. If it doesn't, that's fine. But they do have something called impact tables. So when there is a retrograde, it shows the degrees that are going to be affected. And then it'll show you by square, by opposition, conjunction, trine, all of that. So that's here below. If it floats your boat, if it doesn't, all good. And then if you keep going, this is where it's giving you the dates of, again, once again, if it's stationing, direct, retrograde, all of that. So we've got that, but what I really want you to see is the Mercury shadow, pre and post shadow. And down here again, it's under astrology tools. It's in where there's all these boxes and it says Mercury shadow retrograde. So it's under astrology tools in the little click on boxes, Mercury shadow retrograde. And this is something I also write down on my calendar. So here we've got pre-shadow. So when the pre-shadow begins, when the actual retrograde begins, and retrograde ends, and post-shadow, and then the end of post-shadow. So I really love that information. That is something I include, not explaining it here necessarily, but if you want to scroll down, it can give you a visual, but kind of what it means with the pre and post shadow. And what's happening basically is, so Mercury is going to reach a certain degree, but then it's going to go back over those degrees as it retrogrades and then back forward over those degrees. And so that's what it connects to. Again, it's not a class here on what this means, pre and post shadow. I just wanted you to be able to find it. So there's also one other thing, and let me see if I can find it on the fly here because I want you to be able to see cazimi and combust. And is it down here? If I remember right, it is. This is where I should actually pause the video while I find it again. Nope, I'm going to come back and find the cazimi. I might pause the video and then pull it back up when I'm not searching. So I also want to show you where to find cazimi. So the other place for moons that I mentioned. So there is a tab across the top and it's moon calendar. And so there's different ways that you can use it because sometimes you don't want all the information. If you click on just moon calendar, I find this really useful. Sometimes people do ask about surgery, and it does tell you the body parts that are affected by that particular sign. That can be really interesting. But it can be one of the places where if I want to find waning, waxing, again, it's got the full moons, what quarter the moons are in, all of that. So this is one place that you can find it by simply clicking on. That was that first one, moon calendar. If you want to break it down by the month to see what's happening with the moon. Some people love to track the moons like every 3 days and how they feel. I don't have life force for that anymore, so I don't do that. Um, but this is what else you can find here. So we did see full moons here. We found it somewhere else, but another place that you can find it, like all the moon options are listed across here. They're also on the drop-down menu. So if you wanted to do full moons and new moons only, this is nice because, again, if you're sitting down with your calendar like I do with my paper calendar, this gives me the entire year. I've got every full moon, I've got every new moon, and the eclipses are on it. So I include the eclipses on it as well. So this is really nice. Where I found that was, so it's under the tab moon calendar and strictly full moons, new moons. And a lot of this stuff repeats, but this is another place to find it. Even though this shows you the eclipses on this page, you could click just on that to only look at the eclipses. So that is on this page as well. And again, I think the eclipses are important to include on the chart. So I have that. The other thing are the void moons, this void, of course. And so depending on the level to which I'm going with somebody's chart, I might want to know if they're planning an event, like even like those shorter periods that are a couple of hours. But for writing on my paper calendar, I've gone over here to VOC method and I'm just going down to Hellenistic. And those are the ones I write on my calendar because there are so many void moons. I can't write well, I could, but I'm not going to write everyone on my paper calendar. But this is where the bigger ones are. So, and as it says here, it's 30 degrees before it makes its next aspect. And so those are the ones that I do like to write down. So all I did is I clicked over here and I picked Hellenistic. And let's see if there's any other thing with moons. Play with this. I mean, this can be really fun for what to find. But again, moon calendar does tell you a lot. It's got full moon, eclipses, moon aspects, void, of course, all of that. But sometimes, you don't want all of that and you're fine just saying, give me full moons here. I want to take a peek at cazimi, so I'm going to do a quick pause to see where it is. So you're not watching me click around, and we're going to wrap with that. Okay. I have found it. So hopefully this little copy and paste in the video works. One thing you can just do is search cazimi. And if you search cazimi, it will simply come up here, cazimi and combust planets. But I was determined to try to find what is the little icon to click on. So the icon to click on is we go down here to search engines. So under astrology tools, that's where we looked at retrograde tables. That's where we found the Mercury shadow retrograde. We're clicking on search engines here. And within that, what comes up pretty high here is cazimi. It's under mundane events. And we have cazimi and combust planets. Again, you can just do a search for it, but I wanted to be able to find it clicking through, and I found it. So cazimi and combust planets. And you don't have to necessarily note all of that, on your calendar, like every time something goes cazimi. But, if you just want to be aware, a lot of times people look at Mercury cazimi, Venus cazimi, just stuff in general. You have to pick the planet. So it's not listing everything, but say here we're going to pick Venus. Now it's already set to a degree, so it's not showing you exact degree. So it presets to 17 minutes. So if we hit calculate here, we're going to see that it's showing it from like kind of an extended period of time. So it's almost like Venus is getting really, really close. And then she goes exact and then kind of moves away, but it's a 17-minute orb. So very, very small orb. If you want to know when it happens exact, just go up here where it says angle from sun, click down to 0 and hit calculate. And then it's going to give you when it's exact. And it's going to tell you the degrees in the chart. So the date and the time. So that's where you find cazimi in the chart. If you want to do combust, then you're just going to, reset. You can see you can reset the orb down here. So click on that and recalculate, and it'll give you, that whole kind of angle for when it's combust. But a lot of times people work more with cazimi. And if you want it exact, again, cazimi is basically in the heart of the sun when it's at the same degree. Hit calculate. There you are. I put Venus here, but you've got the other planets that you can do it with as well. So it's not listing everything, but I did want you to know where you could find cazimi as well. Hopefully this was helpful. There's so much more to find in a chart. And if you are interested to know when there are aspects, so again, say you got a paid calendar, like a, honeycomb, for example, and it shows you the mundane transits, the ones that are affecting everybody, but it also shows you ones where it interacts with your chart. I did a completely separate video on that of how to generate a list view of all of those aspects that are going to happen and interact with your personal natal chart. So not just the general runs, but the one specific to you, and there's a separate video to that. And so I will link that down in the comments. Truly, hopefully this helped. It was a little long, and if you guys have any questions, certainly reach out and ask me. I'm always happy to make videos that help you find things a lot easier and navigate your way through all of this. All right, thanks everybody.